"Don't touch me, I'm not worth it," she screamed, rain blurring the bruises beneath her tears. And yet he just stood there in silence, holding the broken umbrella between them, whispering, "Then let me be the fool who tries." The morning light in Yuna's apartment never felt warm. It slipped through torn curtains like a trespasser, painting pale stripes across a table stacked with unpaid bills and cold tea. Her mother's voice echoed from the next room, sharp, tired, always halfway between a sigh and a scold. "Late again," she muttered. "You think the world owes you just because you breathe?" Yuna didn't answer. She had learned long ago that silence was armor. Instead, she tied her apron strings and tucked her hair behind her ears. In the cracked mirror by the door, she barely recognized the girl staring back, shoulders drawn inward, eyes dulled by too many apologies. Outside, the town still slept under a gray mist. The smell of rain lingered in the air, heavy with rust and wet stone. Yuna walked to the bakery where she worked, the soles of her shoes whispering against puddles. Inside, the warmth of fresh bread and butter wrapped around her like a shy hug. Mr. Han, her boss, greeted her with his usual nod, gentle, wordless kindness. He was one of the few who didn't ask questions. While she arranged pastries in the display, she caught herself watching the window. Sometimes she imagined another version of herself on the other side of that glass, someone confident enough to leave this town, to start again. But daydreams dissolved when her phone buzzed with a message from her mother. "Don't forget the rent. I'm not covering for you anymore." Yuna typed 3 words, "I'll handle it," and deleted them before sending. In the city skyline of Seoul, Ha-jun signed the last page of a contract that would make his company another billion won. Applause rippled around the boardroom, but his expression never changed. Success felt mechanical now, like turning a key in an empty room. He dismissed his assistants early. The elevator carried him to the top floor of a glass tower, where his penthouse overlooked the glittering city. Every light below him told a story of someone laughing, cooking, fighting, loving. He watched them all, feeling like a ghost haunting the living. On the balcony, a gust of wind tugged at his tie. He let it fall loose. Somewhere in the streets below, a violinist played beneath the drizzle, fragile notes that rose and broke against the sky. Ha-jun closed his eyes, remembering how sound once meant comfort. His mother had played piano every Sunday until illness silenced the house. After she was gone, he had promised himself never to need anyone again. That evening, rain returned like a memory. The bakery lights flickered as thunder rolled over the hills. Mr. Han handed Yuna a small paper bag. "Delivery for the new residents at Hanul Heights," he said. "Take my umbrella, it's a long walk." She nodded and stepped into the storm. The road curved past empty shops and shuttered cafes, each window glowing faintly like tired eyes. She clutched the paper bag close, the scent of sugar and butter rising through the paper. The rain grew heavier until her borrowed umbrella bent backward, ribs snapping in protest. By the time she reached the bus stop, the night had swallowed everything. Her phone was dead. She hugged her knees, listening to the hiss of passing cars. A sleek black car slowed nearby, its headlights slicing through the downpour. The window rolled down halfway, revealing a man in a charcoal coat. His voice was soft, calm, almost uncertain. "Are you all right?" Yuna stiffened. "I'm fine." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. He studied her for a moment. "You'll catch a fever out here." "I said I'm fine." The man hesitated, then held out an umbrella, an elegant black one, perfectly new. "Take it," he said. She shook her head, mistrusting kindness she hadn't earned. "I can't." "Then borrow it," he replied quietly. "No one deserves to be this cold." For a moment, she saw something behind his calm eyes, a loneliness that matched her own. She took the umbrella, fingers brushing his gloved hand. Warmth startled her, almost enough to make her step back. When she looked up again, the car was gone. Only the echo of his voice lingered in the rain. That night, Yuna returned home soaked but strangely awake. Her mother was asleep on the couch, the television murmuring reruns of old dramas. Yuna set the umbrella by her bedside, tracing the smooth handle. It smelled faintly of cedar and rain, foreign, comforting. She didn't know it yet, but that single act of gentleness had already changed the course of her life. If you've ever been hurt by someone who was supposed to love you, you understand Yuna's silence. But tell me, did it make you stronger, or just quieter? And if a stranger's small kindness ever reminded you that you still matter, maybe this story has already found its way into your heart. Stay with it. If this moment touched something quiet in you, a memory, a wound, a hope, subscribe, like, or leave a comment. Let's keep telling stories that remind broken hearts they still glow. The next morning, sunlight glimmered off the umbrella leaning beside Yuna's bed. She traced the metal ribs where they had bent slightly under the rain. It felt almost alive, carrying the memory of the man's quiet voice. She didn't even know his name. At the bakery, Mr. Han noticed the new umbrella resting against the wall. "Nice one," he said with a smile. "Someone must care about you." Yuna just shook her head. "It's borrowed." The morning crowd came and went, children with jam-stained hands, an old man buying sweetbread for his wife, a pair of students laughing too loud. Life kept moving while Yuna stayed still, waiting for something she couldn't name. In another part of the city, Hajun scrolled through business reports without reading them. The umbrella he'd given away lingered in his mind. He had bought it only yesterday, thinking he might finally walk somewhere instead of being driven. Now it was gone, and strangely, he didn't mind. He imagined the drenched girl's wide eyes, the way her voice trembled between fear and pride. His assistant entered with coffee. "Sir, you have a meeting at 10. Hajun nodded absently. "Cancel it. Move it to tomorrow." For the first time in years, he wanted to walk. That afternoon, Yuna carried a new delivery slip, address written in precise black ink, Skyline Residences, Suite 1902. The name below read Hajun Co. The elevator of the luxury tower hummed softly. Yuna felt small amid marble floors and glass walls that reflected her nervous face from every angle. When the door opened, the scent of cedar greeted her, the same she had smelled on the umbrella. Hajun stood by the window, phone in hand. He turned, eyes widening in recognition. "You," he said quietly. Yuna froze, clutching the paper bag. "Delivery, from Han's bakery." He stepped closer, cautious, like approaching a frightened bird. "You didn't have to return it so soon." "I didn't come for the umbrella." "I know." The silence that followed was heavy but not uncomfortable. He accepted the pastries, then motioned toward the umbrella she carried. "Still works." "Mostly." "Good," he said, and a faint smile softened his face. Yuna felt warmth stir where fear had lived too long. Back home, the mood was different. Her mother sat by the window with a half-empty bottle of soju, bitterness clouding the air. "Where were you?" she demanded. "Work." "Work? With people richer than you'll ever be." Her mother's laughter was sharp. "Don't embarrass yourself chasing lives you don't belong in." The words struck deeper than she wanted to admit. Yuna retreated to her room, pressing her hands to her ears until the shouting blurred into muffled noise. She thought of Hajun's steady voice in the rain. "No one deserves to be this cold." That night she packed a small bag, wallet, uniform, a change of clothes, and slipped out quietly. The umbrella lay folded under her arm like a promise. The city looked softer under drizzle. She wandered until exhaustion settled into her bones. At a deserted bus stop, she sat on the bench, eyelids heavy. Somewhere in the distance, tires hissed against wet asphalt. When she opened her eyes, headlights glowed before her, the same black car, the same man stepping into the rain. "You shouldn't sleep out here," Hajun said gently. "You'll get sick." Yuna blinked, too tired to hide the truth. "I didn't know where else to go." He didn't ask questions. He only offered his hand. "Then come somewhere dry." She hesitated. Every lesson from her mother screamed, "Don't trust anyone." Yet the exhaustion in her heart was louder. She took his hand. Hajun's home felt nothing like she imagined. It was elegant, yes, but filled with quiet warmth, plants by the window, a faint smell of green tea. He guided her to a guest room, speaking softly so she wouldn't startle. "There's food in the kitchen. Towels in the closet. Rest first, we'll talk later." Yuna stood awkwardly, unsure whether to thank him or apologize. He gave a small nod and left, closing the door behind him. For the first time in years, she fell asleep without fear of being yelled awake. Hajun paused outside the room, listening to the slow rhythm of her breathing through the door. He felt a strange peace he hadn't known since childhood, like the house itself had exhaled. He sat in the living room, the rain pattering softly against the windows. The umbrella, the twin of the one he'd given her, leaned nearby. Two pieces of the same story now existed under one roof. He whispered into the quiet, "Maybe we both needed shelter tonight." If a stranger ever showed you kindness when you felt invisible, you know how powerful a small gesture can be. Don't let this moment fade. Subscribe, like, and share a thought below, because somewhere, someone is waiting for the same umbrella you once wished for. When Yuna woke, morning light poured through tall windows she didn't recognize. The bed beneath her was softer than anything she'd ever felt. The air smelled faintly of cedar and rain. For a moment she thought she was still dreaming, until she noticed her worn shoes neatly drying by the heater and the umbrella folded beside them like a loyal guard. She sat up quickly. The room was too beautiful: white curtains, books stacked by the window, a vase of lilies still opening to the sun. Panic fluttered in her chest. She didn't belong in a place that clean. A knock sounded. "Miss Yuna." A woman's voice, gentle but formal. "Mr. CO asked me to bring you breakfast." Yuna's throat tightened. I should leave." The maid smiled faintly. "He said you might say that." She set down a tray, rice porridge, tea, a small dish of fruit. "He also said you haven't eaten properly in days." When the maid left, Yuna stared at the steaming bowl. She touched the porcelain, half expecting it to vanish. Downstairs, Hajun was already dressed for work, though he hadn't slept much. He stood by the window where rain still misted the city. For years that view had been proof of his distance from the world. Now it felt like a wall he wanted to climb over. His sister, Ji-eun, entered without knocking. Her heels clicked like punctuation. "I heard there's a girl upstairs," she said. She needed a place to stay. "Since when do you run a shelter?" Hajun didn't answer. He poured tea, hands steadied. June crossed her arms. "Do you know what people will say? A young woman, living here alone. She isn't living here," he cut in quietly. "She's resting." Ji-eun studied his face. "You can't fix loneliness by collecting strays." "I'm not trying to fix anyone," he said, his tone so calm it silenced her. "Sometimes you just open a door." Yuna finally ventured downstairs, clutching the umbrella as if it might shield her from judgment. When Hajun saw her, he set aside his tea. "You slept well." She nodded. "I should thank you and go." "You're free to leave any time," he said, "but at least eat something warm before you walk into the rain again." Her stomach betrayed her with a soft growl. She blushed. He smiled, a small genuine curve of the lips that made him look younger. "There's soup in the kitchen," he offered. She followed him, uneasy but curious. The kitchen gleamed, yet the smell of miso and scallions felt homey. He ladled broth into a bowl, set it before her, and took the seat opposite. Yuna tried a spoonful. It tasted like safety, light, quiet, and new. She whispered, "I don't understand why you're doing this." Hajun folded his hands. "Neither do I," he admitted. "Maybe because someone once helped me when I didn't think I deserved it." Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, the silence between them felt like understanding. That afternoon, Ji-eun's words echoed in Hajun's mind, but he ignored them. Instead, he arranged for Yuna to stay in the guest wing until she found another job. He even called Mr. Han to confirm she'd taken time off, careful not to reveal where she was. Yuna spent the day wandering the halls, marveling at small things: a painting of the ocean, the soft hum of distant music, how every window framed light differently. Yet each new comfort deepened her unease. The more kindness she received, the more certain she was that she'd ruin it. When she passed a mirror, she hardly recognized the girl reflected there. Clean clothes, hair tied loosely, eyes uncertain but alive. She whispered to her reflection, "Don't get used to this." Evening came, and with it, the sound of rain once more. Hajun found her standing by the glass doors that opened to the garden. "It rains too often lately," she murmured. "Seoul has a way of washing itself clean," he replied. "Maybe people do too." She glanced at him. "I'm not sure I can." "Then stay until you're sure." A flicker of fear crossed her face. "Your sister, she doesn't want me here." "She worries," he said simply. "That's her job. Mine is to decide who crosses my doorstep." Yuna's eyes shimmered with something between gratitude and guilt. "You shouldn't waste your time on someone like me." Hajun's reply was quiet but firm, "It isn't a waste if it's real." Later, when the house had fallen into its usual hush, Yuna lay awake staring at the ceiling. The rain tapped gently against the window, rhythmic and steady. For the first time in years, the sound didn't scare her. It reminded her of the night he'd stopped his car. Downstairs, Hajun sat alone in the dim living room, looking at the umbrella propped by the door. He wondered how a single act could tangle two strangers' lives so completely. Both drifted into sleep in separate rooms, yet their dreams carried the same image, an endless rain that didn't feel cold anymore. Some people run from kindness because it feels like a trick. Others stay and learn it was a door all along. If you've ever struggled to believe you deserve gentleness, tell your story below. And if Yuna's hesitation reminds you of your own, like and subscribe, not for me, but to remind yourself you're still capable of opening the next door. Morning light spilled across the dining table, turning the steam from 2 cups of tea into small ghosts that drifted upward and disappeared. Yuna sat on the edge of her chair, still unsure whether she was a guest or an inconvenience. Hajun placed a folder in front of her. "House rules," he said, half smiling. "More like guidelines." Inside were neatly typed pages, nothing about silence or obedience, only simple things. Breakfast is at 8. You may use the garden as you wish. Payment for any work you do here will be deposited weekly. "You're giving me a job?" she asked. "You need one," he replied. "The garden's been neglected. I thought you might like to care for it." Her surprise softened into something close to relief. "I used to help in a park when I was younger." "Then it's settled," he said, his tone final but kind. "Stay until you decide where to go next." The garden became Yuna's refuge. Rows of hydrangeas drooped under recent storms, and the soil smelled of earth and renewal. She worked quietly, trimming, watering, whispering to the plants as if they could understand her. Sometimes Hajun watched from his study window, pretending to read while listening to the faint scrape of her trowel. Days found a rhythm: tea at dawn, work through morning, dinner shared at opposite ends of a long table that grew smaller each evening. The silence between them changed. It no longer carried awkwardness but calm. One evening, as the sun bled into gold, Hajun stepped into the garden. "You've brought them back to life," he said, nodding toward the hydrangeas. "They were just thirsty," Yuna answered. "People can be like that too," he murmured. She smiled faintly. "Some stay thirsty even when they drink." He looked at her then, really looked, as if realizing the strength hidden beneath her gentleness. "You speak like someone who's seen too many dry seasons." Rumors started soon after. A business magazine photographed Hajun entering his home with an unidentified young woman. The picture spread quickly online, comment sections guessing, accusing, spinning stories out of shadows. Jiun called him in a panic. "You have to end this, Hajun. The company can't handle another scandal." "There is no scandal," he said. "Then make sure there won't be." He ended the call, jaw tight. For years he had protected his privacy with quiet discipline. Now the world pried open his windows. Yet when he looked outside and saw Yuna brushing soil from her hands, he knew he couldn't send her away because of whispers. That night, he found her standing by the fountain, phone clutched in her hand. The glow on her face was pale. "My old classmates saw the article," she said. "They're calling me names." He took a slow breath. "People believe noise faster than truth. I don't want to cause trouble for you." "You're not." "But—" "Yuna," he said softly, "you belong where kindness is returned, not questioned. Stay until the rain ends." The words steadied her. She turned back to the fountain, watching ripples blur their reflections. For the first time, she didn't feel like a visitor. Over the following weeks, the house changed. Hajun began leaving his study door open. Yuna sometimes hummed while cooking. The emptiness that once ruled each room started to dissolve. One evening they found themselves laughing at something trivial, a cat darting across the garden wall, and the sound startled them both. "You should laugh more," Yuna said. "I forgot how," he admitted. She thought about that as she returned to her room. Maybe that was why fate had brought them together, not to rescue her, but to remind him. A few days later, a small newspaper printed a retraction. The rumor cooled, though Hajun still received curious stares at meetings. When Ji-eun visited again, she found him calmer than she expected. "You're risking your name for someone you barely know," she warned. He poured tea and slid a cup toward her. "Do you remember when I was in the hospital after the car accident? A nurse sat with me every night, though it wasn't her shift. I never knew her name. But she changed something in me. Ji-yoon sighed. You're impossible. Maybe, he said. But I sleep better these days. That evening, Yoona placed a small pot of daisies outside his office door with a note, for your desk. They like sunlight. When he saw it later, he smiled and whispered, so do I. Outside, the garden lights flickered on, bathing the flowers in gold. 2 umbrellas leaned by the front door now, his and hers. Some homes aren't built with bricks. They're built when 2 lonely people decide not to look away from each other's quiet. If you've ever found safety where you least expected it, tell me in the comments. And if you believe that gentleness can still change the world, stay, subscribe, like, and keep the light alive. Autumn arrived quietly, wrapping Seoul in a thin silver light. The hydrangeas outside Ha-jun's house had begun to fade to soft blue-gray, the color of memory. Yoona spent her mornings trimming the dying petals, whispering thanks before cutting them away. Ha-jun watched from the balcony, coffee cooling in his hands. She had changed the rhythm of the house. It breathed again. He realized he now timed his days by her footsteps, the scrape of her gardening tools, the way she hummed when the wind caught her hair. That afternoon, clouds thickened. Yoona bent to pull a stubborn weed, the metal edge of her trowel slipping. Pain flared across her palm. She gasped. Ha-jun was beside her almost instantly. Let me see. It's nothing, she said, hiding her hand. Please. His voice was calm but firm. Slowly she opened her fingers. The cut was small yet deep enough to sting. He fetched a first aid kit from the porch and knelt beside her. The gesture felt oddly sacred. This quiet man crouched in the dirt, cleaning her wound as if tending a rare plant. When the antiseptic touched her skin, she flinched. He paused. Did I hurt you? She shook her head, unable to explain that it wasn't the pain of the cut that made her pull away, but the memory of hands that had never cared if she bled. He wrapped the bandage carefully. There, he said softly. It'll heal soon. Her eyes shimmered. You say that like you've done it before. He smiled without humor. I've had practice, different kinds of wounds. Later, they sat on the steps watching rain thread through the branches. Yoona broke the silence first. My mother used to tell me I ruined everything I touched. Ha-jun turned toward her, but she kept her gaze on the rain. So I tried to touch less, she continued. People, dreams, anything. It was easier to pretend I didn't want things. He listened, every word pressing against his chest. When she finally looked at him, her eyes held the weary honesty of someone confessing to the sky. You don't ruin things, he said quietly. You save them. I've seen the way you treat this garden. She shook her head. Plants don't talk back. They don't need to, he replied. They stay alive because someone believes they can. Her breath caught, a small sound that was almost a sob, almost a laugh. The rain stopped near dusk. Ha-jun went inside, returning with an old photograph. 2 boys standing before a piano, one smiling wide, the other serious. That's me, he said, tapping the solemn child. I used to play with my mother. She wanted me to perform. My father thought music was a waste of time. After she passed, I stopped playing. Yoona studied the photo. Did you ever start again? Not yet. Why? He hesitated. Because I'm afraid the silence will sound louder than the music. She understood that kind of fear. It wasn't about the notes, it was about everything the heart might remember once they ended. The following morning, Ha-jun's sister arrived unexpectedly. Ji-yoon's expression was tight, her words careful. You're being talked about again. People say the girl's living off you. Yoona stood frozen by the kitchen doorway. Ji-yoon didn't notice at first. I know you mean well, brother, but this isn't sustainable. The board wants to know who she is. Ha-jun's tone stayed measured. She's someone rebuilding her life. Ji-yoon sighed. And what about yours? Only then did she see Yoona. Their eyes met, one full of caution, the other of apology. Ji-yoon's face softened slightly. I just don't want you hurt, she murmured before leaving. Yoona retreated to the garden, heart pounding. She felt like a shadow that had wandered into the sun by mistake. That evening, Ha-jun found her sitting by the fountain again, head bowed. I heard, she whispered before he could speak. Your sister's right. I shouldn't be here. He crouched beside her. Do you want to leave? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Tears welled but didn't fall. I don't want to cause more pain. You're not, he said. You're proof that pain can become something gentle. At that, her tears finally came. He didn't touch her, just sat there, the distance between them filled with quiet understanding. When night deepened, she placed the blood-stained bandage on the edge of the fountain and whispered a small wish, to heal without hiding. Upstairs, Hajun opened his piano for the first time in years. The first note trembled, uncertain, then found its place. He imagined Yuna's laughter among the chords and realized the silence didn't scare him anymore. Some wounds close because time passes, others close because someone finally saw them. If you've ever carried invisible scars, let Yuna's garden remind you, healing isn't loud, it's patient. Subscribe, like, or share a comment so stories like this keep blooming in quiet corners. The city had slowed to a breath by the time evening arrived. Rain clouds drifted apart, leaving the air cool and sweet. The garden Yuna tended every morning shimmered beneath a thin mist. Tiny lights blinked in the grass. At first she thought they were reflections from the house until one drifted upward and pulsed softly. Fireflies. She laughed, startled by the sound of her own voice. It was small, uncertain, but real. She ran toward the fountain, watching the insects rise like tiny lanterns. For the first time in years, darkness didn't frighten her, it glowed. Inside, Hajun heard the door slide open and the sound of footsteps in the wet grass. He followed. You found them, he said. They found me, she whispered, eyes wide. I've never seen them before. He stood beside her. They visit every summer, but they've been gone for years. Maybe they were waiting for someone to bring the garden back. She looked up at him. They only glow because they've survived the dark, right? He nodded. That's what my mother used to tell me. For a long time, they stood silently, surrounded by flickering light. The world seemed to breathe slower around them. Later, they sat on the veranda with cups of barley tea, the night air humming with crickets. Yuna traced the rim of her cup. I used to think I was broken, she said. You were never broken, Hajun replied. Just buried under other people's noise. She smiled faintly. Maybe. It's quiet here. I can finally hear myself think. What do you hear? Hope, she answered after a pause. Hajun turned his gaze to the horizon, where city lights blurred with stars. Then the house is doing its job. In the following days, a peaceful rhythm settled again. Yuna began painting small signs for each flowerbed, labeling them with both Korean and Latin names. Hajun returned to the piano each morning. Soft melodies drifted through the halls. The servants whispered that their employer had changed. He smiled more, spoke more gently. One evening, Yuna brought him a small box. Inside lay a simple wooden keychain shaped like a leaf. For luck, she said shyly. You helped me find mine. He accepted it with both hands. Then I'll keep it safe. The gesture was small, but it carried the weight of gratitude neither could easily express. Summer festivals bloomed across Seoul. Fireworks traced patterns above the river. Hajun suggested they visit one evening. Crowds weren't Yuna's comfort, but she agreed. Among the stalls of lanterns and roasted chestnuts, she looked around in wonder. Children darted past, waving sparklers. A vendor handed Yuna a paper lantern. Write a wish, he said. She hesitated, then wrote in neat letters, to never forget this piece. Together, they released the lantern. It rose slowly, catching a current of warm air, drifting toward the stars until it became another point of light. On the walk home, Yuna asked, Do you ever think about what comes after happiness? He smiled. Maybe more work. Maybe more patience. Happiness isn't a finish line, it's a moment we learn to protect. She nodded. Then I'll protect this one. The streetlights cast their shadows side by side, long and gentle across the pavement. That night, the fireflies returned, dancing outside her window. Yuna whispered to them, Thank you. She thought of all the small things that had led her here, a broken umbrella, a ride offered in the rain, a door left open. Downstairs, Hajun placed the wooden keychain on his piano. The leaf shimmered under lamplight. He began to play a quiet melody that carried through the halls, reaching Yuna's room like a lullaby. Neither spoke again that night. Words would have been too heavy for such fragile peace. Some nights remind us that healing isn't a miracle, it's the moment we see light where darkness used to be. If Yuna's fireflies stirred something in you, tell me what you'd wish for under that quiet sky. Subscribe, like, or share your thoughts, because maybe the next lantern that rises carries your own hope with it. It happened on an ordinary morning, the kind that began with birdsong and ended with a silence that felt too heavy. Hajun was reading the paper when the photo caught his eye, his face and Yuna's side by side under the headline Millionaire's Secret Companion. The article was cruel, half speculation, half mockery. It twisted their quiet friendship into something scandalous. He felt the air leave his lungs. For a moment he just stared, as if the words might rearrange themselves into truth. Downstairs, Yuna was feeding the fish in the pond when her phone began to vibrate with messages. Old classmates, strangers, even customers from the bakery. Gold digger. Pathetic. You really found your shortcut, huh? The words blurred before she finished reading. Her hands trembled, the phone slipped into the grass. When Hajun found her, she was sitting on the garden steps, eyes vacant. You saw it, he said quietly. She nodded. Is it true what they're saying? He opened his mouth, but no answer came. Not because he believed the rumors, because he suddenly realized how little he had protected her from them. Her voice was flat. Your sister called me. She said the board might remove you if this continues. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration tightening his shoulders. I'll handle it. How? She whispered. By pretending I don't exist? The question cut deeper than he expected. He took a step closer. Yuna, please. But she shook her head, tears finally spilling. All my life, I tried to stay invisible. Now people see me, and it's for the wrong reason. He reached out, hesitated. I can fix this. Her eyes lifted to his, filled with something that broke him, gratitude and finality. You already did. You showed me kindness. That's more than I thought I'd ever have. That night, the mansion felt like a stranger's house again. The music that had filled its halls stopped mid-melody. Yuna folded her clothes into a small bag, hands steady but heart shaking. On the desk she placed the umbrella, the one he had given her on the first night. Next to it, a single note in neat handwriting. Thank you for letting me breathe. She looked around once more, the piano, the garden through the window, the faint trace of her laughter still lingering in the air. Don't forget the light, she whispered, and left before dawn. Hajun woke to silence. The umbrella by the door was gone. He found the note a moment later and sat for a long time without moving. Ji-eun arrived soon after, holding a stack of news reports. We can contain it, she said briskly. But we need a statement. Say she was an employee. Say she left. Hajun's voice cracked for the first time in years. She's not a statement. Ji-eun stopped short. Then what is she? He looked past her to the empty garden. The first person who made this house feel alive. Days turned into weeks. The gossip faded, replaced by new stories, new distractions. But the quiet stayed. Hajun went through the motions. Meetings, dinners, polite smiles. But every evening he returned to the same balcony, staring at the city lights that now seemed cold. Sometimes he played the piano, not for music, but to fill the silence. Each note felt like an apology whispered to the wind. Yuna, meanwhile, found herself in a small seaside town hours away. She rented a tiny room above a cafe, working mornings washing cups and afternoons arranging flowers for the tables. The ocean became her companion, steady, forgiving. People there didn't know her name or her story. She liked it that way. Yet every time it rained, she found herself glancing at passing cars, half expecting a black one to stop. At night she wrote letters she never sent. I hope the garden's still blooming. Do you still play the piano? I'm learning to smile without flinching now. She kept the letters folded inside a box beside her bed, tied with a ribbon of faded blue. One evening a storm rolled over the sea, wind rattling the windows. Yuna stepped outside, letting the rain soak her hair. It no longer felt like punishment, it was memory. She whispered into the storm, "Thank you for teaching me warmth." The rain answered only with its rhythm, but in it she almost heard his voice. No one deserves to be this cold. Ha-jun never spoke publicly about her, but in private he changed the way his company worked. Donations to shelters, anonymous scholarships for young women leaving difficult homes. When reporters asked why, he said simply, because everyone deserves a place to rest. He never mentioned her name, but the world noticed his gentler eyes, the pause he took before every decision, as if listening for a voice that once spoke softly beside him. The post arrived on a windy afternoon. Ha-jun rarely checked his own mail. Most letters were bills or invitations. But one envelope sat apart, handwritten, its edges salt-stained as if it had traveled through weather. Inside was a single sheet and a fragile firefly wing pressed between two pieces of paper. "Dear Mr. CO," it began, "I never said goodbye properly. Please remove my name from the garden records. I won't return, but thank you for letting me breathe long enough to start over." The letter was unsigned, but he didn't need a signature. Ha-jun stared at the wing until his eyes blurred. He remembered the night she had whispered, "They only glow because they've survived the dark." The tiny wing caught the light even now, shimmering like a heartbeat. Without another thought, he packed a small suitcase, left instructions for his assistant, and booked a flight to the coast. The seaside town was quiet, wrapped in sea salt air and the distant cry of gulls. It didn't take long to find her, the woman arranging wildflowers in glass jars behind the window of a cafe. Yuna didn't see him at first. She was humming softly, sleeves rolled to her elbows, sunlight touching her hair. When she finally looked up, the world seemed to still. He stepped inside, every heartbeat loud in his ears. "You kept the garden alive even from here," he said, his voice low. She froze, the stems slipping from her hands. "Why are you here?" "To return something." He placed the letter on the counter. "You forgot to keep it for yourself." Her eyes flicked to the firefly wing and then to him. "You shouldn't have come. People will talk again." "Let them," he said simply. They talked before, and the world didn't end. They walked along the beach, shoes in hand. The sand was cool, the tide curling around their feet. "I thought leaving would make things easier," she said. "For you. For me. Did it? Some days." She smiled sadly. "But I missed the piano through the walls. And the way the rain sounded in your garden." He looked out at the sea. "I missed the sound of someone breathing in the next room." A pause stretched between them, comfortable, real. "I can't go back to that mansion," she said at last. "It's too big for who I am." "Then I'll build something smaller," he answered. "Somewhere between your world and mine." They reached the end of the pier where lanterns swayed in the wind. He turned to her. "I was silent when I should have spoken. I'm sorry." "You don't owe me that," she whispered. "I owe you truth," he replied. "You were never my charity, Yuna. You were the reminder that people can start again." Her eyes glistened. "And what do you want now?" He smiled faintly. "To keep learning how to listen." The gulls wheeled overhead, their cries fading into the wind. The next morning he visited the cafe again, leaving a small package on her counter, a sketch of a small shop by the sea, filled with flowers and sunlight. Beneath it, a note, partnership offer. No conditions. Yuna traced the lines of the drawing. For the first time since she left Seoul, she felt the weight of fear lift. That evening, she found him sitting by the water, tie loosened, hair tousled by the sea breeze. "If I say yes," she asked, "does it mean staying forever?" "It means starting again," he said. "Together, if you want." She looked at the horizon, where the sun melted into gold. "Then yes." No promises beyond that, just yes. When they returned to the cafe, children were releasing lanterns into the dusk. One drifted close, light flickering like a heartbeat. Yuna cupped her hands around it, whispering something he couldn't hear. "What did you wish for?" he asked. "For courage," she said. "To stop running from what's good." Ha-jun nodded. "Then we'll face it slow." The lantern rose, carrying their reflection upward until it vanished among the stars. Months passed, and the small seaside town began to change. A new shop appeared on the corner where the breeze carried the scent of salt and lilac. The sign above the door read House of Light. Inside, sunlight pooled on polished wood floors. Shelves overflowed with flowers, violets, hydrangeas, white roses, each with tiny handwritten tags. Yuna stood behind the counter tying ribbons around bouquets. Hajun watered the plants by the window, sleeves rolled up, laughing quietly when a spray of water caught his face. "This place suits you," he said. "It suits us," she corrected, smiling. He nodded, glancing around the room. "Do you ever miss the mansion?" She shook her head. No. It was too quiet. Here, the world breathes. Customers came and went, an old fisherman buying lilies for his wife, children pressing their faces against the glass, a lonely traveler who left with a single daisy and a softer expression. Yuna treated each with the same patience she once wished for herself. In the afternoons, when the sun dipped low, she wrote little notes to slip inside bouquets. "May this bring you calm. May this remind you you're seen." Hajun pretended not to notice, though he sometimes caught her handwriting on scraps of paper around the shop. "You're changing people one flower at a time," he told her. She laughed. "Maybe. But mostly, they change me." One morning, Ji-yoon visited. She looked different, less hurried, her smile gentler. "I wanted to see the shop," she said. "It's beautiful." Yuna handed her a small pot of daisies. "They like sunlight." Ji-yoon's eyes softened. "So do you." She turned to her brother. "You look happier, Hajun. I didn't think this life would suit you." "It suits me because it's real," he said simply. When she left, Yuna touched his arm lightly. "You forgave her?" He nodded. People do strange things when they're afraid of losing someone. Yuna understood. Fear had ruled so much of her life. Now, gentleness did. Evenings became their favorite time. They would close the shop, brew tea, and sit by the open door watching lanterns bob across the harbor. The glow reflected in their eyes like twin stars. One night, rain began to fall, a soft drizzle that smelled of beginnings. Yuna stepped outside, tilting her face to the sky. "It's been a long time since I was afraid of rain," she said. He joined her under the awning, smiling. "Maybe because it brought us both here." She reached for an old umbrella leaning by the door, the same one from that first night. The handle was worn, but it still opened perfectly. She twirled it once, laughing. "Looks like it finally found its home." Later, after closing, Hajun returned alone to Seoul for a day. The mansion had been sold, but the new owners let him walk through the garden one last time. The hydrangeas bloomed brighter than he remembered. He knelt beside the fountain, planted a single new seed, and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me to listen." As he left, he noticed fireflies hovering near the water, their light steady in the drizzle. He smiled, proof that even here, darkness had learned to glow. When he came back to the coast, the shop windows glowed against the night. Yuna stood inside arranging tomorrow's orders. She looked up and waved. The sight hit him with quiet joy, no drama, no rescue, just two lives finally at peace. He locked the door behind him, turned the sign to closed, and joined her by the counter. "Do you ever think about how unlikely this was?" "Every day," she said. "And every day, I'm grateful we didn't let fear end it." They didn't need more words. The rain outside became music, steady and kind. In the final scene, dawn breaks over the harbor. Yuna opens the window, the first light spills across the flowers. Children run past the shop laughing. The ocean glitters like glass. She whispers to herself, "I'm home." A few fireflies, out of season, drift through the open door and vanish into the sun. If this ending made you breathe a little easier, hold on to that feeling. Like, subscribe, or leave a comment, not for algorithms, but as a small thank you to every quiet act of kindness that turned a life around. Tell me, when was the last time you let light in after rain? Thank you for staying with this story to the very end. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you'll not miss out on the next video.